At 4:47 in the morning, I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, holding a diaper bag in one hand and my daughter's shoe in the other. And I watched the account balance on my phone drop to zero because I was the one draining it. My twins were asleep in their car seats in the garage. My husband was asleep upstairs, breathing slow and easy like a man who thought he had gotten away with everything. And I remember thinking, very calmly, that the sunrise he would wake up to was going to be the first honest morning of his entire life. Because by the time light came through those blinds, the money would be gone. The babies would be gone, and I would be gone. And the woman who had helped him build his life for 3 years was going to find out that the sister she thought was too soft to fight back had been paying attention the whole time. Let me back up. My name is Rebecca, and I want to tell you how a marriage I would have described as ordinary and safe turned out to be a stage. And I was the only person in my own life who did not have a script. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, the older of 2 girls. My sister Megan was 4 years younger, and from the day my mother brought her home from the hospital, I was told that Megan was the fragile one and I was the strong one. Megan had asthma. Megan cried easily. Megan needed watching. So I watched. I made her lunches. I stayed home from things so I could be there when she got off the bus. When our father left, and he left when I was 14, I became something like a second parent while our mom worked doubles at a nursing home. I did not resent it back then. I loved my sister. I would have said, without hesitation, that I would take a bullet for that girl. I met Daniel when I was 26. I was working as a pediatric nurse at a hospital in Columbus. Long hours, night shifts, the kind of job that leaves you smelling like antiseptic and running on vending machine coffee. He came in one night because his nephew had a fever. And he was so gentle with that little boy, holding him against his chest and humming. That something in me just opened up. He asked for my number by the elevators. He was 30, in regional sales for a medical device company. Tall, easy to laugh, the kind of man who remembered the name of every waiter. We got married 11 months later in a barn venue with string lights. And my sister Megan was my maid of honor. She cried during my vows. I still have the photo. Here is the part one needs you to understand. Because it matters for everything that comes after. I gave things up for that marriage. And I gave them up gladly, which is why it took me so long to see what was happening. Daniel's job wanted him to travel. A lot. 2, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. All over the Southeast, but especially Charlotte, North Carolina, where the company had a big regional hub. We agreed that one of us needed to be home and steady. And since his income was almost triple mine, it made sense that the steady one would be me. So I went from full-time nursing to per diem, then to nothing at all when the twins came. Ellie and Noah were born 4 years ago, a girl and a boy. 7 weeks early, and I spent 41 days living in the NICU parking lot. Daniel visited when he could. He was traveling. Always traveling. And I told myself that a man who worked that hard for his family was a man worth waiting up for. I want to be fair to the version of me from back then. She was not stupid. She was tired. There is a difference. And the world does not always let you tell them apart. The first warning sign was small, and I explained it away. Which is what you do with small things. Daniel started keeping his phone face down. Then he changed the passcode. When I asked, lightly, over coffee, he laughed and said the company had pushed a new security policy because of a data breach. And honestly, that sounded plausible, because he did work in medical devices. And those companies are paranoid about that kind of thing. So I let it go. The second sign was the calendar. Daniel used a shared family calendar app with me. Mostly so I could plan around his trips. And I started to notice that his Charlotte trips did not match the rhythm of a normal sales schedule. A good salesman goes where the clients are. But Daniel went to Charlotte the same 4 days almost every single month. Like clockwork, the way a man goes home. The 8th through the 11th. Every month. I mentioned it once, and he said Charlotte was his biggest account and they liked consistency. And again, that sounded like something a person might say who was telling the truth. The third sign was the one I could not fully explain away. And it involved my sister. Megan had moved to Columbus 2 years into my marriage. Ostensibly to be near me and the babies. She got a job doing travel and expense coordination for a corporate services firm. The kind of company that books flights and hotels for businesses so the businesses do not have to. And here is the thing that seemed like a gift at the time. Because Megan worked in corporate travel, she got Daniel discounts. She would book his hotels through her company's system. Get him upgraded rooms, better rates, points. Daniel loved it. He said it saved the household hundreds of dollars a month. I thought it was sweet, my husband and my sister, this little team. Taking care of the family budget together. Do you see it yet? Because I did not. Not for a long time. The turning point. The first real one came on a Tuesday in October. I was doing what any exhausted mother does at 11 at night when she cannot sleep. I was scrolling. Megan had posted photos from a friend's wedding in Charlotte the previous weekend. A girl from her college named Priya. And in the background of one photo, at the reception, in a crowd, blurry but unmistakable, was Daniel. My husband. Wearing a suit I did not recognize, laughing, with his hand resting on the lower back of a woman I had never seen in my life. I told myself 100 things in the next 60 seconds. It was a work event. It was a coincidence. Charlotte is his account. The hand meant nothing. But I knew. There is a knowing that lives below your thoughts. In the animal part of you, and mine sat up and would not lie back down. Daniel was, of course, in Charlotte that week. The 8th through the 11th. Like always. I did not confront him. And I want to explain why. Because a lot of people watching this will be shouting at their screens right now. Asking why I did not just call him. It is because I had 2 4-year-old children. No income of my own, no license currently active, and a mortgage in his name. If I was right, and I flinched too early, I would show my hand to a man who suddenly had every reason to hide things better and to make sure I never had a dime. I had spent my whole life being the strong sister who fixed things quietly. So I decided to be quiet one more time. But this time, quiet meant careful. I started keeping a record. Not out of paranoia. Out of self-defense. I renewed my nursing license, which had lapsed. And I did it online, and I paid the fee out of the small amount of birthday cash my mother sent me. So it would not show on the joint account. I opened a separate email address. And I started paying very close attention to the shared calendar. The credit card statements Daniel let me manage because he thought household finance was beneath him. And, most of all, to my sister. The next Charlotte trip was in November. The 7th through the 10th this time, 1 day early, which was itself a small crack in the pattern. On the 8th, I called Megan and asked her, casually, so casually, whether she could look up Daniel's hotel confirmation because I wanted to send him a care package and needed the address. It was a lie, and it was the first lie I had ever told my sister. And my hands were shaking when I dialed. Megan hesitated on the phone. Just a beat. Then she said, "Oh, he is not at his usual place this trip. Let me check and text you." And she never texted me the address. She sent me a message an hour later saying the system was glitching and she would get it to me later. And later never came. That hesitation told me two things. My sister knew exactly which hotel Daniel was in. And she did not want me to know. So I did something I am not proud of and would do again 1,000 times. Megan and I still shared a streaming account, a leftover from when she first moved to town and was broke. And people reuse passwords. I tried Megan's streaming password on her personal email. It worked on the first try. It was our mother's maiden name and the year Megan was born. I had known that password would be something like that. I had raised her. I did not go digging through everything. I went straight to the search bar. And I typed one word. Charlotte. What came up rearranged my entire life in about 4 minutes. There were hotel confirmations going back almost 3 years. Not to Daniel's work email. To a personal folder. Bookings for 2 guests. Bookings that Megan had made on her personal account. Not through her company system, for a suite at a hotel in the South End neighborhood of Charlotte. The 8th through the 11th every single month, under Daniel's name and a name I did not recognize. Vanessa. Vanessa and a last name. And then, in a folder Megan had labeled with just a heart emoji. There was a save the date. A save the date, the kind couples send before a wedding. With a photo. Daniel, in that suit I did not recognize. With the woman from the wedding photo, the one with his hand on her back. And underneath their smiling faces it said, Daniel and Vanessa, forever starts this spring. My husband was getting married. Again. In the spring. In Charlotte. To a woman named Vanessa. And my sister was not just aware of it. My sister was the one who had booked every single hotel where it had grown. For 3 years, and she was helping plan the wedding. I did not scream. I did not cry, not right then. I sat on the edge of my bathtub with the fan on so the twins would not hear anything. And I felt something in my chest go very cold and very clear. Like a lake in January. And in that clarity, I started to understand the whole shape of it. Over the next 2 weeks I learned the rest, piece by piece. And every piece was worse than the last. Vanessa was 33. An interior designer in Charlotte. I found her business page. I found her personal page. Which was public, and this is where it got surreal, because her whole feed was a life. A life with my husband. Weekend trips to the mountains. A little rental house they were fixing up together. A dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit. Photos of Daniel doing yard work and laughing at a grill and holding Vanessa on a porch swing. All of it during the 8th through the 11th of various months. All of it in the exact windows he told me he was working his biggest account. And then I found the post that made me physically sick. 3 months earlier, Vanessa had posted a photo of a positive pregnancy test. 2 pink lines, with the caption that she and Daniel were expecting their first. That they could not wait to be a family, that he was going to be the most amazing father. Their first. As if my 4-year-old twins, asleep down the hall from where I stood, did not exist. As if Daniel had walked into a whole clean second life with no wife and no children in it. I understood then that Vanessa might not even know about me. That she might be a victim too. I sat with that for a long time. And I decided I would tell her, but not yet, not until I had protected my own children first. Because you put your own oxygen mask on first, and my babies were the only people in this whole thing who had never lied to me. But the piece that broke something in me permanently was not Daniel. I had, in some sad way, already let go of Daniel. It was Megan. I went back into her email, and I read the messages between her and Daniel. And they were not the messages of a woman who had been tricked. They were the messages of a partner. She called it their project. She said things like, I moved the 8th to the 10th to keep Rebecca off the scent. And, if you keep the joint card off the Charlotte hotels, she will never cross-reference the statements. And, once the divorce goes through in a way that protects your assets, you can breathe. She was coaching him. My little sister, the one I stayed home for. The one whose lunches I packed, the one who cried at my wedding. Had spent 3 years helping my husband build a second family and figuring out how to leave me with as little as legally possible. And I found the reason, eventually, though the reason does not really matter. Because there is no reason on earth that makes this right. Daniel had lent Megan money years earlier, when she first moved to town. A lot of money, gambling debts she had hidden from me. And he had held it over her, and somewhere along the way holding it over her had become the two of them holding something over me. She was not fragile. She had never been fragile. She had just always let me carry her. And when a stronger person offered to carry her instead, in exchange for selling out her own sister, she took the deal. I stopped sleeping. I would lie next to Daniel at night and listen to him breathe and think about the wedding invitation. Forever starts this spring. And I would look at the monitor on the nightstand, at the little green glow of my twins sleeping, and I would think, no. Your forever is not going to start until my babies and I are safe and far away and holding every card you did not know I had. So I stopped grieving and I started planning. And I gave myself one rule. No revenge. Only protection. Because I had 2 children who were going to grow up watching how their mother handled the worst thing that ever happened to her. And I was not going to teach them that the answer to being wronged is to become cruel. I was going to teach them that the answer is to be smart. And to be free. I found a lawyer, a woman named Patricia in a firm in Columbus. And I paid her retainer out of a credit card I had quietly opened in my own name using my renewed nursing income from 3 per diem shifts I had picked up while Daniel thought I was at a mommy and me class. Patricia listened to everything. She looked at the save the date, the hotel confirmations, Vanessa's pregnancy post. And she said something I will never forget. She said, "Rebecca, do you understand that if he legally married this woman, and it looks like he intends to, your husband is not just an adulterer. He is committing a felony. That is bigamy. And in the state of Ohio, and in North Carolina, that is a crime." The floor tilted. I had been thinking about custody. About survival. I had not fully let myself understand that the man sleeping next to me was about to break a law that could put him in prison. Patricia laid out the plan. And every part of it was legal. Which was the whole point. She told me that the joint account was legally half mine, and that in the state of Ohio she strongly advised documenting and securing marital assets before filing. Because the moment Daniel was served, he would move money, and a man who had hidden a second family for 3 years was very good at hiding things. She told me to gather every document. Birth certificates, the twins' social security cards, my nursing license, the mortgage papers, the tax returns, all of it. She helped me quietly open my own bank account. And she told me that when I was ready, I should choose a morning, take my children, take my half of the money, go to a safe place, and let her handle the rest through the proper channels. I spent 3 weeks getting ready. I copied every file. I photographed every screen. I packed a little at a time, hiding a bag in the trunk of my car under the stroller. I told Daniel nothing, and I smiled at him across the dinner table. And I let him kiss me goodbye when he left for Charlotte the 2nd week of December. The 8th through the 11th, to see his other wife and their coming baby. And while he was gone, I did the hardest thing. I called Vanessa. I will not pretend that call was easy or that it was clean. She did not believe me at first. She thought I was a jealous ex. So I sent her the marriage certificate. Mine. Dated 7 years earlier. And I sent her a photo of my twins. And there was a silence on that phone so long and so total that I could hear her breathing change. Hear a whole life coming apart in real time, and I felt, God help me, sorry for her, because I recognized the sound. It was the sound I had made on the edge of my bathtub in October. Vanessa told me she had no idea. That Daniel had told her he was divorced. That his ex lived in Ohio and was difficult, that he traveled for work. That the 8th through the 11th were the days he could get away. She was 4 months pregnant. She had already picked out a name. And when I told her about the wedding invitation, she went very quiet again and said, in a small voice, he asked me to marry him in a hot air balloon. And I said, I know it hurts. I am not your enemy. But we are both going to need proof, and we are both going to need lawyers. And I need you to not tell him that we talked. Not yet. She agreed. 2 betrayed women, one in Ohio and one in North Carolina. Quietly deciding to protect themselves before the man who had lied to both of them could react. I picked the morning of December the 19th. Daniel had come home from Charlotte on the 11th. And he would not travel again until January, which meant he was relaxed. Home, unsuspecting, sleeping the sleep of a man who thought his 2 worlds would never touch. At 4:15 that morning I got up in the dark. I dressed the twins while they were still half asleep, whispering that we were going on an adventure to see the sunrise. And Ellie asked if we could bring pancakes, and I said yes. Baby, we will get all the pancakes. I carried them one at a time to the car in the garage and buckled them in. I loaded the last bag. Then I came back inside, and I sat down at the kitchen counter with my phone. And I logged into our joint account. There was $62,000 in it. Our savings. Money that was, legally and morally, half mine, plus the value of everything I had given up to sit at home while he built a second family on my patience. Patricia had told me exactly what to do, and it was all within the law. I transferred half, $31,000, into the account I had opened in my own name. Not a dollar more. I could have taken it all. I wanted, for one hot second, to take all of it. But I took my half. Because my half was mine and the rest was a matter for a judge. And I was not going to hand Daniel a single thing he could use against me in a courtroom. I watched the balance settle at $31,000, and I closed the app. Then I did the last thing. I left the marriage certificate on the counter. The one I had sent Vanessa, and next to it I left the save the date I had printed out. The one that said forever starts this spring, and next to that I left a single sheet of paper on which I had written 7 words. I know about Vanessa. I know everything. And then, before the sun came up, I walked out of the house where I had given away 7 years of my life. And I drove my sleeping children east toward the light, and I did not look back at that house one time. We stayed the first 2 nights in a hotel, and I sat up both nights watching my babies sleep and waiting for the phone to explode. And it did. It started at 6:52 in the morning, when Daniel woke up. First the calls. Then the texts, which went from confused, "Where are you?" to angry, "What did you do?" to frightened, "Rebecca, please call me, we can talk about this." All within about 40 minutes, which is exactly how long it takes a man to walk downstairs. Read 3 pieces of paper, and understand that his entire architecture has collapsed. I did not answer. Patricia answered for me. He was served with divorce papers at 9 that same morning at his own front door. And by the time he called Megan in a panic, Megan had her own problem. Because Vanessa, 4 months pregnant and done being lied to, had already been on the phone with her. Here's what happened, as plainly as I can tell it. Because this is the part where the consequences land, and I want them to be true consequences and not a fantasy. Daniel did not go to prison, and I want to be honest about that. Because these stories always end with the villain in handcuffs and real life is messy, eh? He had not legally married Vanessa yet. The wedding was scheduled for the spring. And I had blown it up in December. So there was no completed bigamy to prosecute. Which is a bitter thing to sit with, because he had every intention. But the divorce is where it mattered. In Ohio, marital fault and the dissipation of assets can absolutely affect how things are divided. And Daniel had spent 3 years and, as Patricia's forensic accountant discovered, well over $80,000 of marital money on hotels, gifts, a rental house, and a ring for another woman. That money was legally half mine. And he had spent it in secret. The court did not look kindly on that. I kept the house or its equity. I kept the $31,000 I had taken plus a significant portion of what he had wasted. And I was awarded primary custody of Ellie and Noah, with Daniel getting supervised and then structured visitation. Because a family court takes a very dim view of a parent who ran a secret second household for years. Vanessa left him. Of course she did. But she did something braver than leaving. She kept every message, and she filed her own case, because Daniel had made her financial promises and taken money from her too during their fake engagement. And it turned out I was not the only woman he had been quietly draining. The two of us, who had every reason to hate each other, ended up on a phone call one night, months later, comparing lawyers. And we are not friends exactly, but we sent each other a message on hard days. Her son is one now. My twins have a half-brother they may one day meet. Daniel does not get to control that story anymore. We do. And Megan. I need to talk about Megan, because she is the wound that has not fully closed. And I would be lying to you if I pretended otherwise. My sister lost her job, because part of what she had done, using her position and her access to help Daniel hide things, touched the edges of what her company allowed, and when it came out, they let her go. She was not charged with anything. What she did to me was not a crime. It was just the deepest betrayal of my entire life, delivered by the one person on earth I had spent that life protecting. She called me 11 times the week I left. She left voicemails that started as apologies and turned into blame, saying I did not understand the pressure she was under, that Daniel had trapped her with the money, that she had always been the weak one and I should have known better than to expect her to be strong. And that voicemail, more than anything Daniel ever did, was the moment I finally grew up. Because I realized I had spent 33 years believing a story my family told me when I was a child. That Megan was fragile and needed carrying. It was never true. Megan was not fragile. Megan was a person who had learned that if she acted helpless, someone stronger would always take the fall for her. And I had been that someone. Gladly, my whole life, right up until she helped a man plan a wedding to his second wife on the same days he came home and kissed my forehead. I do not speak to my sister anymore. Our mother is heartbroken about it. And she has asked me to forgive Megan for the sake of the family. And I have told her the truth, which is that I have forgiven Megan. But forgiveness and access are not the same thing. I forgive her because carrying the hatred would poison my children's home. But she does not get to be in that home. Some doors you close so that other doors can stay open. And the door I keep open now is the one my twins walk through every afternoon into a house that is calm and honest and entirely ours. It has been almost 3 years since that morning. I am back to full-time nursing. On a day schedule now, in a children's cardiology unit, and I am good at it. And I come home to my kids every night. We are in a smaller house. Just the 3 of us, and there is a little garden in the back that Ellie and Noah planted with me last spring. Tomatoes and sunflowers, and it is the first thing in years that has felt entirely like mine. The $31,000 is long since spent on the things that money is actually for. A lawyer, a deposit, a fresh start, a childhood that gets to be stable. Daniel sees the twins on a schedule. He is, from what I gather, alone now, which is its own kind of consequence, the quiet kind. The kind that does not make for a dramatic ending but is somehow more complete. I want to tell you what I learned, because I did not go through all of that to keep it to myself. The first thing is this. When someone shows you a small crack in the truth, believe the crack, not the excuse. Every single warning sign I ignored was a small crack. The phone turned face down. The trips that ran like clockwork. My sister's 1 second of hesitation on the phone. None of them were proof on their own. But the truth is not usually revealed all at once. It leaks. And the people who love us do not need us to explain away the leaks. Only the people who are lying need that. The second thing is harder. Be very careful about the people you have decided are too weak to hurt you. We build these ideas of the people close to us when we are young. And then we stop updating them, and a grown person can hide inside the softness we assigned them decades ago. I never once suspected Megan, not because there was no evidence, but because I had decided when she was a baby that she was the fragile one and I was the strong one. And my own story about her blinded me completely. The people closest to you can betray you precisely because you have stopped watching them. Because watching feels like a kind of disloyalty. It is not. Clear eyes are not the opposite of love. They are part of it. And the last thing, the thing I most want the woman watching this to hear. The one sitting up at midnight with a knot in her stomach and a face-down phone in the next room. Being quiet is not the same as being weak, and leaving is not the same as losing. I did not scream. I did not throw his clothes on the lawn. I did not burn anything down. I got a lawyer, I gathered my proof. I protected my children, I took my half and not $1 more. And I walked out before sunrise into a life that was actually mine. Strength does not always look like a fight. Sometimes it looks like a woman loading 2 car seats in the dark. Very calmly, and driving toward the light. So here is my question for you. And I really do want to know. If you found out the person you trusted most in the world had been helping the person you loved most in the world betray you, could you ever forgive them, or are some betrayals simply the end of the road? Tell me in the comments. I read them all, and I promise you, whatever you are carrying, you are not carrying it alone.